Hello guys, my name is Anna and I'm from Ukraine and I vlog daily to keep you updated on the real life situation in my country. I think it's important to see the steps and daily routines that Ukrainians go through on our way to victory, and of course we are super grateful for your attention, support and understanding. And the idea of this video came up very easily because we had an air raid alarm, and I can even give you a possibility to hear how it sounds from my flat. And what this day will prepare for us. It's Tuesday, not Monday, but you hear the sounds of air raid alarm. So I started thinking that very often in comments you state with the hashtag that Russia is a terrorist state. I often say it too, but we have never tried to analyze why exactly it is 100% true that Russia is a terrorist state. Well, to start it from something funny, when I talk to my friends over phone, or we try to have plans for the day, I can see the evolution of attitudes that Ukrainians had during this period. At the beginning, it was like, oh my God, we can meet or we can go to, I don't know, hairdressers if there is no air raid alarms. Then the next stage of this evil evolution is when you say, okay, I will come, but only if no missiles hit Ukraine. And now very often people say, okay, let's meet or let's do something, but only if we don't have heavy missile attacks, something like 70 missiles targeted at Ukraine. So this is how we plan, not like blizzard, not like when it's too cold or when it's rainy or something, but you have plans. Okay, we are going to meet, but only if we don't have massive missile attacks on our region. And somehow you adapt to that. But then when you have this momentum, you realize how wrong all that is. And this is because Russia is a terrorist state. Well, the population of Ukraine was falling, and many millions of Ukrainians died starting from the beginning of this century just because of Russia, Soviet Union, Russian Empire. It doesn't matter how you call it, but this is always one and the same gloomy and doomy country that spreads evil, hatred and poverty and alcoholism and whatever all around the world. So at the beginning of the century we had like close to 80 millions of Ukrainians. Now 37, and many of them are now in Europe. Thank you so much for hosting and helping them survive these difficult times. But still, when you think about a nation, this is an example of how genocide, wars initiated by Russia lead to serious demographic cultural identity changes in my country. And I really feel bad for that, because I'm sure we will survive, we will become part of the European Union and NATO and all of these beautiful things, but imagine like 80 millions of Ukrainians and like 34 millions of Ukrainians. This is a totally different country. This is a totally different power. And it is very, very sad. So Ukrainians are very grateful to the European Parliament, to the NATO Assembly, if I'm not mistaken, and to many governments like the Lithuanian one, who say that Russia is a terrorist state. Of course, this will not stop the war, but such labels are important for the diplomacy, for some action, sanctions, and also other things. And the longer this war continues, the more worries appear. For example, the prices on oil and this lowest limit is not yet set. And from what we understand in Ukrainian media, many of our Western allies do not want to provide us with more weapons because they are afraid we can try a counter-offensive on the territory of Crimea, and Crimea is Ukraine, but this can make Russia really angry. Russia is a terrorist. You have to make terrorists angry before you kill them. There is no other way. Because if you start following the demands of terrorists, you lose everything. And I cannot imagine like a situation that you have a group of terrorists who keeps, for example, bank as hostages in a bank, and you tell them, okay, we will not give you $1 million, but we will give you this, and that. Maybe you want some Coca-Cola. This is what happens with Russia right now. From one point of view, it is in isolation, and we are very grateful for the support. But from the other point of view, there are still lots of holes for sanctions, lots of possibilities for Russian people. And many politicians are expecting negotiations will help, and they don't want to make Russia angry. And this is really sad, because Russia is a terrorist state, just as North Korea, Syria, Cuba, and what are the other countries? I don't remember the list, but still. So now let's have a look why it is a terrorist state. To tell you the truth, when the war started in 2014, it was not called war in global media, and in Ukraine they did not want martial laws and other things. That's why it was called anti-terroristic operation. And I did not like this term because it was actually war. But then, when the more I see this war, I realize that actually war has some rules. Geneva Conventions, other United Nations, many other things. I'm not an expert that regulate the rules according to which soldiers of enemy armies behave with each other. What are the things they can destroy? What are the things they cannot? How they treat POWs, and so on. And Russia demonstrates total like, I cannot say org style or whatever. They don't have any rules. They don't treat their own army normally. So how can we expect they will treat enemy's army normally? And they destroy civilian infrastructure. You see, even in my semi-dangerous zone, we don't have electricity, we don't have normal internet, we don't have normal mobile phones. But they also destroy hundreds of hospitals, hundreds of schools, hundreds of cultural institutions, and hundreds and thousands of civilians are killed, many children killed, hundreds of children killed, thousands of children or hundreds of thousands of children deported and stolen as a result of forced adoption that is now advertised on Russian channels. This is genocide. Also, they use these threats like nuclear, destruction of nuclear power station, I don't know, various serious huge missile attacks. They use these techniques to manipulate Ukraine, to manipulate global opinion. They constantly threaten the world when they shoot at power stations, when they discuss the possibility of the nuclear bombing and other things. It is nothing else than a terrorism. They even say like, okay, we are ready to negotiate, or we will continue destroying your electrical infrastructure. Then I question, why are you doing it? It is not an example of war. It is just an example of a mixture of terrorism and genocide. And the problem is, if Russia was a small country without nuclear weapons, everyone would agree that they are terrorists, they must be punished, and Putin's regime must fall, and perhaps Putin must be executed even before the court. I know I have viewers from The Hague. Greetings to you, and I hope one day you will greet Putin with like your judges and maybe bullets or whatever is used for execution of totalitarian leaders. But it is really sad that the size of Russia, Russian money that spoiled many people all over the world, and the presence of nuclear weapons make world very soft, very indecisive when talking to Russia, when talking about Russia. And right now there are still lots of signs of fear, lots of ideas not to provoke. Come on, Russia does whatever it wants. It feels fear, it feels weakness. They disrespect all that. Very often they laugh at us, at West, because we follow some rules. They have a totally violent society that hates common sense, responsibilities, freedom, democracy. They disguise all of that, and we cannot treat them as if they were normal. Honestly, we cannot talk to them as if they were normal, because they are evil, they are terrorists. And it is not only about Ukraine. Russia sponsored terrorism and was a terrorist for countries like Georgia, for countries like Chechnya, for a country like Syria. There are many, hundreds of examples of terrorist attacks, and 100% sure that they have also committed lots of terrorist attacks on the territory of their own Russian Federation to make people obey, to solve some minor problems, or even to distract attention. So there are thousands of Russian lives that were killed by the Russian terrorism. So it's all very, very tragic. And just as with any kind of terrorist, even if it is one person, a group of person, or the biggest country in the world, the behavior and the attitude must be the same, because you cannot negotiate with terrorists, you cannot try to find logic, you cannot fulfill their demands, because then they feel weakness, they feel fear, and they start demanding more. And if we don't stop them in Ukraine, it was not our dream to become a battlefield, they will continue marching, and it can be a serious global problem. So I'm really grateful for those of you who use hashtags and who speak about Russia as a terrorist state. And we cannot forgive or negotiate with terrorists. Remember that. No excuses for Russian actions, no explanation. This is total violence, total aggression, and total hatred, not just against Ukraine, but against normality, freedom, democracy, and all the civilized world that Russians are laughing at, maybe even worlds. If they could proclaim war to aliens, I bet they would. Who knows? Anyway, thank you very much for your support, for buying me coffees, becoming my patrons. That is such an inspiration. By the way, I have a coffee with me. I have just cooked myself one. I'm very bad at cooking coffee, and traditionally it runs out. But this time it did not, so I'm very proud of myself. Thank you very much for your support, for your understanding, and Russia is a terrorist state. Slava Ukraini!